Hello and welcome back to Only a Bag and Italy Travel Podcast. Is that what we're called?
Well, yes, we are.
Okay, great. I keep forgetting. So, this is part 2 of our 2-part episode on expectations.
Tips for traveling with someone else.
That's the one. I can't remember titles right now.
It has only been a couple seconds since we ended the last episode. So this is just, it's lunchtime, y'all.
It is lunchtime, and I only had 2 coffees.
And we're waiting on delivery of pellets. It's a whole thing. We're like on a knife's edge, waiting for the doorbell to ring at any moment. They've got to turn around in a street that's only about 6 feet wide. It's a whole thing.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
When you list it, we're managing a lot. We're doing great.
We're doing amazing.
We're communicating and talking about our expectations.
Which brings us
and needs.
to our episode.
So we kind of ended last episode talking about transportation, but also general staying in communication and trusting each other. And you also touched on the point of sharing responsibilities, essentially. And so
with that in mind,
thank you. Words today are not my friend. So with that in mind, I do want to talk about sharing responsibilities. You talked about in the last episode at the end that when you're traveling on public transportation with people, that one person might be in charge of giving directions and figuring out how to get to certain places. And I highly recommend that you consciously swap off that duty if you're able to, because it often happens that, this happens between me and Nathaniel often, and I have to consciously say, you know what, I'm going to do the directions today. Words, today. I'm doing a Sean Connery voice. All right. So yeah, it's just important to take responsibilities and swap on and off, because it can be really exhausting, like Nathaniel said in the last episode, to be the one always telling people where to go and finding directions on the map. It is a lot. So just swap on and off.
And on that note, I do want to say, if you've already established this, if you and your partner or whoever you're traveling with, it's like one person likes being the direction giver, that is totally fine. Go with that. I think between you and I think I was very fine giving directions, but what it felt like is, and again, I'm using my own personal experience, is that I didn't really get to see much of the city because I was constantly trying to figure out, seeing like things were just more like, is it left or right here? Not like, oh, what a beautiful intersection. And look at that fun little thing up there. And especially when it felt like there was a deadline kind of thing, like, oh, we have to get there because we're catching something. It felt a little bit like, if I was like, we got to go. This thing says we're 12 minutes away. And you're like, oh, but this is nice. We should look at this. And I was like, wait. And I think if we're swapped, then it's like, I don't have to worry about time. You have the clock, you have the map, you have everything. And I get to relax along with you. So we started switching things up. And it does help tremendously, because I realize it's just, again, these are self-imposed responsibilities, for lack of a better example. It's not like you said, hey, can you be the person giving directions every time? It's just, I think when you first went traveling, I had Google Maps on my phone and you didn't. And you had like Apple Maps, which is absolutely hot garbage. I don't know if it's gotten any better.
Is that when I had a Windows phone still?
You might have had a Windows phone, which is not Apple Maps. You might have had just, I don't know, like 2 sticks and like a charcoal drawing of Italy or something.
Yeah, that was horrible.
What it would have been. So I think, because I downloaded Google Maps, used to be, for years, it's unfortunately been really good. And even in Italy, it's really quite good, unfortunately. Unfortunately, saying like, this is now the time where anti-big business. And so what is more big business than the one company that controls everything? So this has gone lovely off the rails. But that being said, is yes, if you're traveling with somebody who's very clear on like, I like to be the direction giver, fine, amazing. But if it becomes a stressful point of contact for the 2 of you or 3 of you or 4 of you, then absolutely like change off. It's somebody else each time, where it's just like, hey, do you find directions?
Absolutely. And this will go into my next point too, but also if the person giving directions accidentally turns you in the wrong direction, that's going to happen.
That's classic.
And if you're the one, sometimes I am great at giving directions. Sometimes my internal compass is just spot on. Other times I have taken us 15 minutes in the wrong direction.
I was going to say, your internal compass is phenomenal.
My map reading
is to be desired. Work needs to be.
I like a paper map.
Yes.
I get very confused somehow on the digital map, the one that like follows you around and turns. I'm like, I always feel like it's pointing north, and somehow it's always pointing where I'm going, or vice versa. I don't know what it does, but I get very confused using the digital map.
But then also it's like we can get really lost somewhere and you're like, yeah, we're still over there. And then it ends up being right. So you have a very good internal compass. It's the, external reliant You're very like traditional. I mean, you'd be great on the sea if you were a captain or something, like a navigator. The stars are there. We're headed west.
Just follow my instincts.
Yeah, exactly.
But that is all to say that if you get something wrong and you take people in the wrong direction, that's going to happen.
Yeah,
be easy on yourself.
absolutely.
Likewise, be easy on the other person giving directions if they take you in the wrong direction. It's just going to happen sometimes.
Absolutely. And hopefully it doesn't happen like on the way to the train station. Something that, again, just as a fun little tip that you and I will do if there is an actual deadline requirement to anything you're doing, like we have to get to the train station at this time, we have to get to the bus station at this time, and it's a place you're unfamiliar with, in the sense that I think when we arrived to Venice, not this previous time, but 6 months ago, we arrived on the train station, but we were leaving the bus station. So the first thing we did is walked from to the bus station from our hotel to figure out where we were going and how long it took roughly, which seems kind of like a very weird practical thing to be the first thing you do in a place. But we knew that we'd have to catch a flight. So it was like, we need to know how long it takes to get here, if there's if it's all stairs, if it's this, if it's that, just so in the morning we're not like, where is this place and where do we get the bus from?
And the bus was pretty close to our hotel. It's not like we spent a whole day mapping out the trip to the bus station. We knew it was about a 5-minute walk.
That's why we got the hotel there, yeah.
Exactly. But we wanted to make sure it's definitely 5 minutes. We have the tickets that we need. We know where we're going, so that when we're sleepy-eyed in the morning that we're going to the bus station, we've already done it and we know where we're going.
Exactly. So that's just something to kind of consider in terms of if there is something like that. If you arrived at Rome Tiburtina and you're leaving Termini, just to figure out how you get to Termini if you have a really tight connection or something.
Absolutely. So the next one that goes hand in hand with swapping off responsibilities of the map and directions is choosing restaurants.
Which I think brings us the entire food episode. Or not food episode, what am I talking about? The food segment. But do we want to start with choosing restaurants?
Yeah, so we've gone over how, I think in the tips episode, how we tend to choose restaurants. Sometimes we do quite a lot of research because we are vegetarian, and it's important that we are pretty sure that a restaurant has vegetarian options, it's within our budget, and it looks decent.
Or beyond just the pasta with like olive oil and garlic, which every restaurant will have, as we've mentioned before. It's very strange when they don't.
But for Venice, neither of us wanted to spend 15 euros on a plate of pasta with olive oil and garlic. We wanted to find food that was interesting and affordable. And
also, if I may, on that note, just because we're talking about vegetarian food now, it's not uncommon, and I think it's a thing like in the States especially, where we're from, obviously, judging by our accents, where like a place that has vegetarian stuff, it's always like it's a hamburger but a vegetarian patty, or it's this but it's vegetarian. When a lot of food in Italy, when like historically in the last 300 years, when you were poor, you didn't have meat, so you'd have something else. So there's a lot of bean heavy dishes. Like Tuscany, it's a lot of bean stews, bean soups, bread stews. It's a lot of things like that. I mean, while there's also tripe and things, there's even in the South, like there's very, very little meat. So there's like a meatball, but it's made with bread and egg and cheese instead of meat. So, and they put that in tomato sauce. It's actually much better than it sounds. It's weird, but it's popular and it's much better than it sounds. But that being said, it is not necessarily like we're always looking for, can you do like a vegetarian, oyster pasta or something like that. It's just, which, is obviously not a thing, but it's more of just the cucina povera, the poor kitchen of Venice, which is, fish, given the fact that they're right next to all the fish.
Yes. So when you're choosing a restaurant, just like having map duties, you can often easily default to one person over and over. If someone has done it a couple of nights in a row and you're like, wow, Jonathan, I just made that person up. Jonathan is great at finding the restaurants. He's just going to be our restaurant person. We're going to rely on him. Jonathan then takes on so much responsibility for the group, trying to find a good restaurant that everybody's going to like and do tons of research. It's a lot of responsibility. So that's another thing, just to consciously swap on and off and help each other find restaurants and not rely just on one person all the time.
And as you mentioned, and I think what you're getting, one of the points you're getting to is, without a doubt, I mean, some people say, I went to Italy and I never had a bad meal, which is awesome for you. And it might not happen ever again. Not to say there are bad restaurants, or there's a lot of bad restaurants, but we've had great meals at a restaurant where somebody else had a bad meal.
Yes.
We've had vice versa, bad meals at a place where somebody else, like, that was an amazing thing. It's like, yeah, they make 5 things really good and they make 20 things okay, and they make 5 things not so great at all.
Or they make something that is really good for that dish, but you just don't like that dish.
That's another good point too. Like, you're like, I don't think I like those 2 things together, or whatever it is. And that's something to also be very patient with. Like, somebody else can find a restaurant they're excited by it. You're like, I hated this place. This was awful. But it's just kind of like, okay, now you don't have to go back. It's not going to ruin the trip. It's not the end all be all of the trip. It's not, you're probably not even going to remember it in a few months. But I say that because sometimes I think people get really hung up on the sort of that kind of that not minutia, but it's the, oh, this isn't very, I don't want to be here. I want to, can we have, it's again, it gets a little like argumentative and very like, but then the person who found it gets like, oh, this is like a personal attack on my ability to find a restaurant.
Right.
Which I think can get really sticky, especially if you're in a romantic relationship or if you're just in a friend, like platonic friendship, anything like that, where again, it can kind of create this thing where it's like, oh, now I'm known as the friend who, or the partner who can't find a good restaurant. And I think it can really create a lot of unnecessary stress and pressure. But also, I mean, again, I think this, a lot of it is just you and I have been in Italy now for so long that, yeah, man, sometimes we have food and it is not good. And you're just like, I could have made this at home better. This is awful. But it's one meal in a lifetime of 1,000 meals. It's not much.
And I think it's also important to find the silver linings of certain things. So I'm thinking of two. We're going to do a Florence episode, Florence Revisited. Okay, so I won't go too far into these, but we found two, I'm going to call them wine spots in Florence recently that we'd never been to. And they were both very inexpensive places to grab a little wine and have some potato chips. And they weren't fancy. They weren't luxurious, but there were so many lovely points to each of these places. It was just a place to sit down and take a beat and have a glass of wine and some potato chips. And it was just a vibe, as the young people say. And neither of these places probably were what I expected 10 years ago when I first came to Italy.
Exactly.
But me now, they were affordable and they were chill and they were perfect for what they were. You know, so
and they're very Italian. They're more authentically Italian than what you might be thinking Italian is. Which
so
I think is a big
finding silver linings. I guess.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And the last one in this shared responsibilities goes with the other two. It's sharing responsibilities on deciding what to do. We're going to go into in a few minutes expectations for what you want to do on your trip, but sometimes if you're traveling together and you both want to go in a certain day, you want to see the Uffizi, you want to grab some lunch, and you want to have a coffee, and you want to have a glass of wine before dinner. That all sounds great, but within each of those are tiny decisions about which one do you want to do first, which cafe do you want to go to. We need to find a place for lunch. Do you want to sit down for lunch? Do you want to have a plate of pasta? Do you want to grab a sandwich and go stand in line for the Uffizi? And there's a lot of little tiny decisions. So it's important to share responsibilities daily on what you're going to be doing and staying in communication about your expectations for that day.
And if I can use my mom as an example, because I don't think she's ever listened to this podcast before, and watch it be the one episode she listens to, or two episodes she listens to. No, but we think sometimes we'll travel with her and she'll be like, I think recently we were somewhere and it was cold and raining and she was like, I'm really cold. I need to, go inside. And we're like, okay, well, we can go here. And she's like, well, whatever you guys want to do. And it's like, no. I want you to be happy, because if you're not, very selfishly for me, this is going to ruin the experience if you're talking about how cold you are. So let's go get warm. I'm happy to have a drink somewhere while you get warm. And I think that's the thing. Like, if you don't suffer in silence is a big one. Like, Darcy is famous for suffering in silence. Big silence sufferer. Me, very vocal. Very vocal. Tiny little things, I tell everybody. I'm a perfect Italian in that way, because you talk to any Italian about what's wrong with them, and you're going to get a laundry list of
medical maladies.
Yes, it is amazing.
And how it's either too cold or too hot.
Yes, it's kind of phenomenal, if we're being honest. So I think I fit in well in this country where it's just full of complaining, and you like to silently suffer. And I think when you're traveling with somebody, it's important to also be very clear about, and I think in the Venice episode we talked about too, like how I only brought one pair of shoes, not two, which is one of the things that led to, in the tip episode, not one thing that led to it, but the most recent reminder that I typically only bring one pair of shoes, because I have that thing where I wear one pair of shoes at a time, and then I get tired of them and I switch to something else, and I get tired,
You don't get tired of them. You wear them out until there's a million holes, and there's more hole than shoe.
Right. I get tired of them. I get tired of my feet being wet when I walk around. I have a couple pairs. Yeah, my feet get very wet because it's just like there's holes all in the soles. But I'm like, no, but the top looks great. I just need to resole them. And I never resole them. I'm like, there's no cobbler down the street.
The sole is still so good. I'm like, there's no upper left on your shoe.
That's a good point. Yeah, this one has a lot of holes in the upper. So, but that's something, if you're walking around and your feet are killing you, you have to be clear about it, because somebody else might be like, oh, no, I'm feeling good. My knees are fine. My feet are fine. I'm going to keep walking. I'm going to go explore. And you're like, I might die if we take another step. And that's something, don't suffer in silence. Be very, very clear about what you need. And also, it's okay to be a little selfish too. Like, I say that too, as far as if it's in the summer and you're hot, it is so much better to get inside somewhere and cool down, because it is so much better that you cool down than you suffer a heat stroke or something because you didn't want to be selfish, or didn't want to be perceived as selfish, I should say. So if you're like, I'm really hot, I need to cool down, I need to find somewhere to just get out of the heat, or if you're here in the winter for some reason, you're too cold, definitely kind of almost like kind of treat yourself, even if it's in a partnership, but it's still like, I mean, I'm speaking for you or for me, but it's like, you have to kind of treat yourself as slightly more important, in terms of like, you can't be aware of how my feet feel. I can't be aware of how hungry you are, kind of thing, until you tell me.
Well, I don't think that's selfish, though. I think that's communicating your needs, which is checking in with the group. And I think an important thing is that if I am too hot in the summertime and you really want to go see something, I'm going to say, I'm feeling really exhausted and really hot. I really need to get in somewhere inside, cool down, and have a glass of water. That's what I need right now. I'm willing to do that on my own if it's important for you to get to the museum in 5 minutes.
Right.
I'll meet you there later. But this is like an emergency almost, or whatever it is. It's very important to me that I meet my needs right now. Are you willing to come with me? Amazing. Thank you so much. If you're not, I'm okay going to meet my needs by myself, unless, I physically can't. Like, I'm actually going to pass out. I need you to bring me to somewhere else, something like that.
No, and I think that's the thing. Exactly. We've also, I think one time we saw somebody and they got their shoes in a really bad shape, like her and her partner, and they were not bad, but I think she did something to her ankle but kept walking on it, and then they ended up hailing us. It was in Rome, and be like, is there a way to get an ambulance or a thing? And we were trying to help them, like, there's a vet down the street that's open. I know that's not what you need right now, but like, because I think it was a day, honestly, there was an ambulance strike or something crazy. It was just like a really bad storm. But again, it was one of those, you have to communicate immediately when something might be going wrong, because again, if you push it off.
Poor thing is, she was like, I didn't realize how bad it was. I was trying to like muscle through, and we've walked really far. And I was like,
and you're like in the middle of a residential neighborhood now.
Yeah. And I'm like, we can all try to carry you, like take turns helping you walk until we can get you somewhere. But you know.
No, and I think that's the thing is, again, this is one of those things where we sound so, I don't know, like serious about these things that seem kind of small, but it is because I think, again, going back to what we talked about in the last episode, I don't think there's anything really for me in a trip that if I don't pay money for, like that my last $500 for, it's going to make or break the trip. However, there are things like not communicating to the group that I am feeling like I might pass out, or feeling like my feet are bleeding or something like that, that will make or break a trip.
Absolutely.
So, and when I say selfish too, I mean, sometimes, as you're saying, it's more important to put yourself in front of the group in terms of, I know the group is going to do this thing. I'm going to have to step out of the group. Even if they're like, well, it's not going to be as fun without you. It's like, cool. I need to step out of the group though, and I need to take care of this. And then if I can meet you later, I'll meet you later. If I can't, I can't. But I just want to kind of put that in a little, deliver it as emphatically as possible. Because again, we know people who, they'll go to Florence, they'll go to Rome, and they don't realize how hot it is, because it isn't necessarily hot. It's 95 degrees or 36,
it's coming from the
37.
south of the U.S., just to be clear.
Yeah, no, but I meant also.
there might be people listening in Massachusetts who are like, that is horrific.
Well, it's thinking more like it's 95, but we come from a place with a lot of trees and open spaces and wind. And when you're in Rome, you're going to find out there are very few trees. There's very few cross breezes, because you're down these like some
you're just in an oven.
You are in an oven, and everything feels like it's baking. And I mean, even you and I, again, I feel like we're quite learned travelers when it comes to being in Rome specifically and getting out of the heat and things like that. But there are times where, we were in like Trastevere once, and it was like, oh my, I might pass out. Like I don't even know where a water fountain is. I don't know this neighborhood at all. I'm feeling really bad. But
that's also, especially with heat, I think, because you can pass out pretty easily. That's a good time that if you know your abilities, and you know, like in my example, my fake example, where I need to get inside, I might pass out. I need to get water and cool down. I, in that moment, need to really check in with myself and decide, am I physically able to get there by myself? If Nathaniel wants to go do something and it's important to him to get there in a timely manner, or do I need to, be more, humble, lose my pride and say, I really need your help right now. Can you please come with me to this place? I'm worried that I'm not going to get there by myself, or something like that.
Exactly.
Because I think it's it's easy to be prideful and just be like, yeah, I'm just going to like sit this one out, you guys, when actually you're having an emergency or you really need help doing something. Lose your pride.
Yeah.
Tell your group, tell your partner, tell your parent or your kid, even if you have to, you know, if you're an adult child, I need you to help me do this thing. This is where I'm at right now.
There's this tweet, and I'm going to paraphrase it because every summer I think about it, and it was somebody said they were at the beach with their friends. It was a guy, and he's like with his guy's friends, and he's putting on sunscreen. And like this friend's like, oh, you're such a wimp for putting on sunscreen. He's like, you think you're stronger than the sun?
Yeah.
The sun?
Than skin cancer?
Yeah. So I think about that a lot because I think there's a lot of this machoism and I say this as a man with man friends. I don't know. I don't like most of my friends are quite, like myself. We're not very macho, I think. I pay other people to help me move stuff. I mean, come on. No, but I think it's just like, I think it's a lot of group of people who are like, I don't need an umbrella when it's raining. I don't need sunscreen when it's sunny. I'm like, yeah, fine. But also,
I don't need to drink water. I'm a man.
Yeah. And
you do need to drink water.
That's the thing. I'm like, you might actually die. Like you need to, like, I don't want to call you out, but like legitimately, this is an episode for you too. If you're like, again, I say that because we're from Savannah and it gets easily 100 degrees in the summer and it's super humid and you can basically, there are days you feel like you can't breathe because it's like condensation inside your lungs. And I have never been more hot than I have been in Rome because it gets like 113, 115 during the heat waves and it bakes. I mean, the sun is
and there are times
brutal.
when you just can't think because it's so hot.
Yeah. True.
Like
I mean, we're
your
inside
brain
and I
stops
have
working.
no idea what I'm thinking about. And I mean, even like, this is when, Italy goes under these red warnings of like, do not be outside at this time. And definitely don't be outside in a place without shade. Like if you have to be outside, don't do without shade. A lot of like the public workers won't be outside if it's like, the people who trim trees or this like that for the city, they're all inside. They're basically like, it's not safe to be out there. So I say this just for people who are listening who are like, no, a little bit of heat never bothered me. It's like, okay, well, it might. That's all I'm saying.
For sure.
Do we want to circle back to the food or are we going to?
Yes.
Okay.
Let's go into food.
Well, I wanted to talk about that mainly because we just talked about mere minutes ago before we got in this rant about sunscreen, about choosing restaurants and don't make one person choose a restaurant. I also want to throw in there too, if you are vegetarian, celiac, something else. Those are the two big ones I think where it's like you can't eat gluten or you can't eat meat.
Yeah.
Maybe you should not, to be very clear, you should not be responsible for the restaurant choosing either, but there is, I think, a level of personal, like you and I, when we're traveling with somebody, it is up to us to tell people we're vegetarian. And it's also up to us to then put forward some ideas that are places that have great, like sausage or roast or Florentine steak. Because I'm like, it's in Florence, a lot of places will have both vegetarian options as well as a Florentine steak. It's not like one or the other. So that is something to consider in terms of, again, it's just being a little bit responsible for your own needs. If somebody's choosing the restaurant that evening, potentially helping them if you were like, I can't actually eat these things.
And also, if you're the one choosing restaurants and you know that someone around you has dietary needs or allergies, do your best to find those, like if they're gluten-free or celiac or vegetarian or anything like that. Do your best to find that, but that is added responsibility on top of just finding a decent restaurant.
And it's also one of those points of contention that is something to communicate. Like there are 1,000 ways to handle it, and there's probably 500 good ways to handle it. So if it works out something where if you are vegetarian, celiac, something with I'm trying to think of other examples of like really strict diets, and I mean there are some but
a lot of people have like shellfish allergies.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Like
so it's something that if you're like, I feel so much better if I'm in charge of what I eat, that's totally fine. If you're like, I want to take on the responsibility of where to eat because I want to make sure that they know how to serve celiac, they know how to serve vegetarian, things like that. I say that because vegetarian, they are playful with that. They're like a little sprinkle of pancetta on top and like, it's basically vegetarian.
And likewise, like if you have a serious allergy or you have a serious need, like if I eat a little bit of meat, I'm okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll try to politely spit it out, but I physically am able to eat it. It's totally fine. But if you're someone who has like a shellfish allergy and you're traveling with someone who wants to go to this really well-known fish restaurant, they only serve fish items or seafood, I guess is the word, in Venice or something. It's okay to maybe split up that night. You go to two different restaurants because you have a medical need to not be in the restaurant where that person really wants to go. And it's important to them that they get that experience for themselves.
Exactly. And I think actually, now that we're talking about food, again, you mentioned earlier, this is all sort of hand in hand, but if maybe since we just talked about that real quickly, I'll loop it in. But one piece of advice is, And this, I think, is, I would say, especially important if you are traveling with a romantic partner, that if you need to take time apart to do so, it's not a sign that you are failing to travel together. Especially, I think this is especially important if you're either new to being in a couple or if you are new to spending that much time together. Because I think you mentioned in the last episode, traveling with somebody else is kind of like marrying them for a week. And I think that's true. But most people who are married both have jobs and are not around each other that often.
Every day, all day.
Yeah. So it's like, it's kind of consider that this is that person every day, all day. And all of their little quirks that might not have bothered you when you're home might become the things that grate against your very soul. Like Darcy, and when Nathaniel chews his fingernails, she's like, I will literally put this like phone through your head. But, lovingly.
I have never done that, though.
No, of course not. But you will stare at me and you're like, what is that sound I'm hearing, Nathaniel? And I shouldn't chew my fingernails anyway. It's a very bad habit, but I do it when I'm stressed. But that's a fun example for you at home. A little insight into our relationship. But no, that's...
what's it called? Misphonia?
Yes.
Lots of noises.
A lot of noises set you off.
Straight to my brain. Like, it hurt my brain.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And again, I mean, that's obviously something to communicate, but I only say this too because it's not a bad thing if you're with a partner and you're like, I love this person, but oh my God, I need like an hour to myself. That's totally valid, totally, and it's responsible to take that time. If you're just like, and I say this too, this is something it is potentially important to bring up before the trip, not necessarily on the trip. On the trip, it absolutely can cause some hurt feelings on both sides. Before the trip, it can be like before things get heated, because I say that too, because sometimes on the trip, and we haven't really talked about this too much, and I kind of want to talk about it later, but why some things maybe start to get at you. But basically, you're surrounded by unfamiliar experiences, unfamiliar people, language, everything. You have no idea what's going on. You're so far out of your comfort zone, even though it's Italy, which is kind of very similar to, the United States or England or Australia, which is most of our list, Canada, speaking to our listeners here. But it's very similar in terms of like Western practices and things like that. It's like, okay, we drive on the right side of the road and we, I don't know, say thank you. I don't know. There's things. Maybe not. It's like people say.
It's pretty similar though.
It's quite similar. So it's still one of those things where like, there's no way I'm going to have, some sort of culture shock. And then you do, and then it can be even more surprising. So when you're on the trip and you tell somebody, hey, I kind of just need like an hour for myself, it can come across, not that you have to be in charge of their emotions or how they feel, but it can come across a little harsher than you intended if you're on a trip and somebody's driving up a wall and you're
if tensions are high on both sides and then you say, I need time to myself.
It can absolutely sound like, oh, this is not a good sign. And it can also kind of, I mean, again, I'm not trying to be a psychologist here. I said that in the last episode, but it can whiplash into, no, we should spend more time together. It's like, oh no, we should not.
Yeah.
So before the trip even starts, if you're like, hey, if you ever need it, or if I ever need it, let's just say, we need an hour. We'll go to an hour. It doesn't have to be meals. It doesn't have to be certain things like that. It should be fun together, but it could be like, whatever, just to have some time, go to a park, sit separately, something like that.
And likewise, if there are just different things that each of you wants to do, and we'll get into that after food, expectations for the fun things you want to do on the trip and what you want to see. But if you each want to see something different, it's fine to go each see something different. But if it's important to you that your partner come along with you and it's important to them that you come along with them, you're going to have to compromise and each go do something that you don't want to do because it's important to the person you're traveling with.
Which is basically the basis of all relationships.
That is a good point. Yes. I'm just
like
over-explaining compromising in romantic
No, but I meant like it's a good thing because I think sometimes people are like, no, I don't want to do that thing. It's like, but they're doing nice things for you. So do you understand how that works? I say this too because it sounds like that's very much, I think, obviously advice, amazing advice for romantic relationships, but potentially for like, it's a little less serious. Obviously, you're going with your friend. Your friend's like, I really want to go do this thing. You're like, oh, that sounds awesome. That sounds boring as hell.
Yeah.
You go do that.
It's like, I think we used the example a couple episodes ago. Is my mom wanted to go to, I think, the Pitti Palace when we were in Florence. And I really wanted to spend more time at the Uffizi because it's massive and takes forever to get through. So we just split up. And then we chatted about our experiences that night over dinner. And that's great to just split up and do your own things and then come back together and share that varied experience together.
And going back to food, just because I wanted to wrap that up, because then I think we're going to, we have more to talk about, but I wanted to go back to food briefly.
It's not going to be brief.
I want to go back to food in-depthly.
Yes.
One of the things, though, is we've talked about this before. We talked about this on the travel tips, but I wanted to kind of really make it super clear for those of you who didn't listen to that one or just finding this or whatever it is, that food means different things to different people, believe it or not. And that is something that we've repeated this kind of throughout, and we're probably going to repeat it continually continuously throughout this episode, especially, but words that you think you have an agreed upon meaning might mean different things to somebody else. And I say that because food, how could you be mistaking food for something else? When you and I say food, I think we just mean I'm hungry. I'm going to have a sandwich, maybe something cheap, maybe something easy, something like that. Other people hear food and they think sit down at a restaurant. This can be the basis, believe it or not, for a lot of arguments and disagreements. Somewhere it's a time-based thing. We don't have an hour or two to eat. Or somewhere it's we've talked about this in the travel tips. My biggest tip ever since I was first traveling is do so with a full stomach. Never travel on an empty stomach. It's the only thing I remember about some cities is how hungry I was in that city. I remember being in Bruges and I think I had like a bread roll the entire time I was there because it was so expensive. And I think I left 2 or 3 days later with like just angry and stressed out. And I'm like, I remember
a couple pounds lighter.
Yeah. And I remember being lovely, but I was like, I couldn't afford to eat at restaurants. And I was in such a shoestring budget. It was like my first trip. I was 18. It's the whole thing. But it's such this like shoestring budget. And I didn't realize how expensive Bruges would be because, like I didn't do any research into it, whatsoever. There we go. And that was a bit of a surprise. It was like $7 or $8 then, which is like 2013 for like a hot chocolate or something. And I was like, no. So
I love the 18-year-old Nathaniel was like, I'm hungry. What do I need? A hot chocolate.
Yes. Well, because it was like chilly nights and I was like, oh, hot chocolate at a bar. And I was like, oh my God, no.
100% who you are as a person.
I've finally gotten to the point in life where I can go to hot chocolate bars or bars with hot chocolate and enjoy the fun, spooky evenings. Mm-hmm. It's sort of like that scene in Lord of the Rings when Frodo and Sam and the 2 other fellows who also have names that I'm completely forgetting and go to that fun little bar and they see Aragorn sitting in the corner and he's like, ooh, for a pint. I want to be that. I want to be him, cloak, sitting in the corner of a tavern, but like drinking hot chocolate instead.
Yeah.
I'll have
the pint.
That's the goal. I know you will. That's the goal for me. So that being said, is food. Get very, very, very clear on what food means to you and whoever you're traveling with. We talked about this in budget. If your friend really, really, really wants to go to like a Michelin-starred restaurant and you have absolutely no interest or not the budget for it, or food's cool, but you didn't see the bear, so you're not really sure what they're talking about, then I'm assuming, then it makes total sense that you're like, yeah, you do that. It sounds like $250 well spent for you. For me, it sounds like a waste of $250. I'm not going to lick a plate full of like, I don't know, raspberry jelly or something like that. That actually sounds really good. Rosemary jelly or whatever, those little gelatine things they put on the plate and like, oh, have a single bite of a prawn cracker. I'm making fun of it because I really want to go, to be very clear. This is like hate making fun of it. Like, oh man, I wish I could have, check out a Michelin-starred restaurant and there's a single bite of a prawn cracker with rosemary jelly. Point is, this is going way too long and because I'm not talking about what I'm supposed to be. But point is, yes. So talk about what food means to you. It's also, I think I've talked about this in that episode. Like my brother and my father came. My dad's very big on that sort of like, you don't eat 3 meals a day. I don't know. Yeah, fine. Okay. I do. I like 3 meals. I don't eat breakfast typically, but when it's available and good.
When we travel, we eat a lot.
Yes, because what else are you going to do, right? I mean, like.
It's the way to travel.
It's the way to travel.
You have
it's
to
stomach
taste
forward.
the city.
Yes. Don't lick the city, but taste the city.
Yeah.
Ooh, Taste of Italy. No, that sounds terrible. Terrible idea for a podcast name. We are thinking of different names, so feel free to pitch us.
It's a great name for a food podcast.
Yes.
But that's not what we are.
It sounds like an olive oil brand. I mean, it sounds great. So, but no, I was going to say like my father would like skip a meal. So when my brother was here, he was trying to do the same thing. And I was I'm like, Haven, I'm not covering your identity at all. Haven, you can't.
You've already name dropped him on the podcast before.
Like you're in Italy for like, what do you not, were you having like small meals? Cause, dad's not hungry. So I'm not hungry. I'm like, don't be codependent. No. You're in Italy. We can walk around. We've walked like 8 miles today. We're going to eat. We're going to have a gelato. And I think, you and I will have easily in the summer, 2 gelatos a day, easily. Sometimes 4 or 5 if it's like a special day or something. Or if we're like, we're doing a little gelato tour for fun.
If you listen to one of our Venice episodes, we talked about how many frittelle we ate, which are like little fried donut. They're not little. They're big donut ball thingies. And we ate so many.
So many of them. And that's the thing though. It's kind of like, you're not going to do that on a day-to-day plate. I mean, that's obviously, no one's having 5 gelatos a day at home. But when you go to a place like Rome, which has amazing gelato, obviously, and there are 15 places you should try, and you're only going to be in Rome for 2 days, you're going to have 7.5 gelatos a day. That's just the rules. I don't make the rules. I think that's a law. So that's all to say is, I want to get clear on that sort of thing in terms of, because when we travel with your mom or something like that, she's a little less food inclined. She's like, yeah, if we have a gelato, it's awesome. She likes gelato. She's not a crazy person. But it's a little less food inclined of like sandwiches or street food and something like that. But you and I are more like, oh, that looks good. Let's have that. Mm-hmm. And I think there's also, when I travel with my mom or something like that, or when we would go with her, and we'll be like, oh, let's get this like arancini or this little fried thing or this little sandwich. It's not like a meal in my head. That's just like food.
It's just a snack.
Yeah. So my mom was like, oh, so you guys have already eaten? I'm like, no, I ate physically, but that was like second breakfast.
Yeah.
This is first lunch. We still have 4 lunches to go.
Yeah. So I think it's important to talk about that before your trip, like what your needs are, what your expectations are for food, but also constantly stay in contact about what you want that day, because you're going to eat different things every day. And some days you might just want a little snack at lunch. Sometimes you might want to sit down for lunch. And that depends on what your physical needs are, but also what your time needs are. Like you kind of touched on earlier, if you have a big schedule for that day, you might be grabbing a sandwich and eating it standing in line. Or you might be having a lazy day and sitting at a restaurant for several hours.
Exactly.
Likewise, if you're taking public transportation and you need to grab some lunch, which is always the case for us, we always need some sort of meal right as our train is taking off. Like
that kind of public transportation, yes.
Yeah, sorry, we're taking a train from one city to another. Usually it's around breakfast time or around lunchtime, I feel like. So we stay in contact about what snacks or lunch we want to get on the train. And it's important to, if you're traveling, to be very clear that you're probably not going to sit down for lunch on the same day that you're taking a train.
Yes.
You are probably going to get something and then take it to the train to eat.
Absolutely,
so,
yeah.
All very important to communicate.
And also on that note is, I know that some people, even somebody who's listening to this podcast, probably don't care about food that much. You're just like, if it's fine, I'll eat the tourist restaurant. I don't really care. Pizza tastes the same to me, whether it's the best in the world or the worst in the world. I don't really care. That's awesome. I'm so happy for you. I sound so sarcastic. And no, but I mean, like, for those of you who travel with somebody like that, I think it is okay to be kind of clear of like, yes, I know that you're okay eating at the tourist restaurant. Just for the heck of it, let's not. Let's just eat somewhere a little different. Let's eat somewhere where maybe there's no English and German and Russian and Belgian, which I guess is Flemish, on the menu. Let's eat somewhere where there's just Italian on the menu and where I have to use Google Translate or something like that. I don't know. You could build the story yourself, I guess. But my point is, I think it is okay if also, again, going back to needs and expectations, you don't really want, you do not want to go to Italy and have the same food you've been having at the Olive Garden or local Italian restaurant back home. It's a bummer. Mm-hmm. And if you don't know what Olive Garden is, it is an affront to all Italian food everywhere. It is an American chain. For those of you listening from abroad, I'm really hoping Olive Garden has not spread outside of America. So, that being said, no, I think just that's a big thing to keep in mind as far as food goes, what your expectations are, what you want to try, what you are okay not trying, how often you want to eat. And some of this obviously is going to happen in the moment. Mm-hmm. You might be thinking, I don't eat very much. And then you're walking around a lot and you're sweating and you're hungry and you're just like constantly hungry. That's okay. I think I don't eat very much when we're at home. And as soon as we're walking 10, 12 miles a day, my body's like, I need calories. Mm-hmm. And I need them mostly from fried food and gelato. Or whatever, I assume.
Yeah, but things. Also, I think we touched on this, but I can't remember. Communicate to the people you're traveling with, especially before you go, and then keep, communicating about it, what you can afford to spend on food. You kind of touched on it with Michelin restaurants, but in Venice, we've said this a million times, but it's like 15 to 20 euros for a plate of pasta. And
that does not include the coperta of 3 or 4 euros. It does include like a bottle of water that's 2 or 3. Mm-hmm. So even 15 euros, one of the reasons you're bulking at it, to be very clear, is 15 each is 30, plus the coperta for each, give or take, is already like 38, plus a bottle of water, 40 something. Before you know it, it's a $50 dinner, and that's on top of what might have already been a $50 lunch. That's on top of the snacks and the coffee. So it is like, budgeting $75 a day per person is a pretty fair budget, but that's not a budget everybody has if it's a 10-day trip.
Right, exactly.
If that makes sense.
And when I could get a sandwich, like a pretty decent filling sandwich for 6 euros versus a plate of, and a bottle of water, so 7 euros, versus, like, what did you say, 40 something for 2 people? Mm-hmm. So 20 something for 1 person. That's a big difference.
Yeah,
so
huge.
Communicate what your budget needs are with whoever you're traveling with, so that you can know what to expect.
Yes. And I also, again, if this is for those of you who are listening and you're not on, like, we're assuming, let's say you go for 2 weeks and you're not spending $30,000 in your trip or $20,000 in your trip even. You're spending, even if you're spending 10, and it's not by yourself, like 2 people spending 10 is a pretty fair budget for 2 weeks. It might be even a little low for 2 weeks, but it's
just wild.
Which is wild. I know. And I say that too because obviously this is, especially for Americans, things are expensive and seem to be getting more expensive. And we have a lot of friends who are wondering where all their money went. And it seems like it's kind of a spreading issue in terms of a lot of people not having as much money as they once did. And that is something when, if you're still traveling where, cuts have to be made. And your example of it's a €5 sandwich instead of 20 euros to sit down, that's 15 euros saving. But consider too, that is the difference genuinely between the Freccia Young class ticket in economy and the Freccia Young class ticket in business. So it's a silly thing, but it's like if you want to take business class, it's only 15 euros more if you're under 30 or 35. I think it's under 30. So
I thought it was 35.
Praise be, because I just turned 30 like a week ago, and I'm like, I'm just missing out on those discounts now. Terrible. And so that's something to keep in mind as well, is just that you are sometimes a little savings here means a little bit more money there. And I mean, even bottle of water, we talk about this a lot. A grocery store, you get 1.5 liters of water, which is a giant bottle of water for 33 cents. That's the same thing at a restaurant costs you like 4 or 5 euros. The tiny bottles, weirdly, are really expensive, both at grocery stores and not at grocery stores. It's better to get the big bottle. But that being said, is sometimes there are some different expectations on food, on different expectations on where you want to eat, how much you want to spend, how much you're willing to go over. Because that's the other thing. If you're somebody who budgets really, really strictly, and if you're like, it's $75 a day for food, and you're with somebody who's like, oh, instead of going to this restaurant, I found this one, and you're like, that's actually now going to make this $115 for today's budget. Again, these are just things to communicate.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've said this before, if you look at the restaurant online, if you look at pictures of their menu on Google Maps, for instance, it is very possible that it's going to be more expensive when you go than what it was online, just because prices are, like they're always going up. So that's just something to keep in mind and budget for yourself and to communicate about. We also touched on this, but if you have an allergy, I highly recommend that you communicate that to the people you're traveling with, just so that they know you're not like sharing a plate of something that.
Yeah, good point. Because we did talk about if you have an allergy and you want to be the one in charge of the restaurant, but definitely at least tell the people you're with.
Right, so that they don't share some food with you that accidentally has your allergen in it without knowing.
That's a really good point.
Absolutely, just to keep everybody safe.
Yeah, and I think that is for food, right? Or the more.
One other tip is that if you are traveling with a family or a group of friends.
Oh, yes, of course.
If you are more than about 5 or 6 people, you will need to call ahead to every restaurant because they need to make sure they have space for you. And often restaurants physically will not have tables big enough for that many people, or they may only have one table left for that night, which is a 2 or a 4 top. So if you get there without calling ahead, they just might physically not have space for you.
But also, and if you're like, oh, they can put tables together,
no.
A lot of times they cannot. It's sometimes there's really no space to put 2 tables together and make so I think 6 is pretty much the upper end of what I would say of going door to door. I mean, you could probably get away with 8, but even here we are, which is like middle of nowhere in terms of, a Friday night, maybe at the most packed places in the area we're in might be full. But no, if you're going like a group of 8, everyone calls and they're like, I have to make sure because they might not have space.
And especially, I think a lot of you will be traveling in cities which have pretty small restaurants here because a lot of the restaurants are kind of in the countryside. They just are in larger buildings. But we ate at a great place in Florence, but the restaurant had 1, 2, 3, maybe 8 tables, but it was also in like an L shape just because it was in the city. There's no other space for it. That you can't move the tables. The tables are where the tables are.
They would have been 2 different tables because there's nowhere to the left or the right to put another table. And I think if you're traveling with a group, basically call ahead. And that's actually even good advice for anybody. I know we haven't really talked about this, but making reservations is pretty big in Italy in terms of you can often go to a restaurant at like 7:30, 8 o'clock and be like, it's empty. We're going to have no problem. But everyone made a reservation for 8:39. So it's not just because you don't see anybody there does not mean that there's space. It also does not mean that they can accommodate you. So it's if when in doubt, make a reservation. However, sometimes at touristy restaurants, they're not. I mean, in the summer they're like sometimes really packed. But when people are just like tired and you can't think of anywhere else to go, like I'll just go here. But if you're slightly out of the touristy areas, even in Prati, where there are not many touristy specific area, like around the Vatican, there are a bunch of touristy restaurants, but like 3 blocks outside of that, it's more neighborhood restaurants. So those are the places you will have to call and make a reservation, I think.
One thing that I don't need to say, but I will for my own peace of mind, I think everybody listening, I'm sure you're an awesome person and you wouldn't do this, but it seems to be an issue, like a bigger issue in the States recently than it has been before, of people making multiple reservations or making one party making reservations at several different restaurants to keep their options open, but then not calling ahead at all or with sufficient time to cancel other reservations. So multiple restaurants are just left with an empty table, having lost out on
Yeah.
a lot of money for that night. Don't do that.
Please don't do that.
I don't think any of y'all would do that, but I just want to put it out there.
That's a very polite way of saying, and a very unopinionated way of saying, don't do that.
Yeah.
I think that was much more, I don't know. Less
Thanks. I really don't expect anybody.
No, of course not. We assume everybody listening to this is a great person.
Yeah, but
Please be.
okay. So let's move on to setting expectations for what you want to do on your trip.
Cool.
So think about what kind of traveler you are. Do you want to see museums and or historical sites? Do you want to go shopping? Do you want to just kind of wander around and get a vibe for the city? You could be all or one of these things, but it's important to communicate with people traveling with you what your expectations are, what your kind of travel style is, and what you want to see.
Absolutely. Honestly, I think that pretty much tied up because we've talked about this off camera, or off mic. Sorry, what am I talking? Well, I've ever recorded myself. But we've talked about this off mic, and there are some people who come to Italy for high-end fashion shopping because it's like a limited release. You can only get in Italy. It's a different product or whatever it is. Fine. But when somebody says shopping and that's what they think, and somebody else might think like, yeah, like local leather workers or something. Mm-hmm. And same thing with, I want to see certain sites or I want to see certain museums. And you might be saying certain museums and you're like, I have one museum in mind I really want to see. And somebody else is thinking the same thing of a different museum. Again, it's just setting expectations, getting clear and figuring out. And also, I think we mentioned this last episode, what you're willing to wait in line for and how long and what you're not. That is something that is more talk about it, I think, on the day of, when you're kind of in the moment, not necessarily ahead of time, but there are plenty of things you and I are like, oh, we should go see that. And we're like, that is a 2-hour line. There's no way that is worth 2 hours.
Mm-hmm. Or I always use the Uffizi as a great example for me because I'm an artist and I really like staring at art as well.
JerseymiltonFineArt.com.
Thank you. And
Throwing it
so
out there.
I would be willing to stand in the line for the Uffizi for 3 hours. But I think we didn't stand in the line that long, but I still kind of felt bad making you and my mom wait in that line. And you wanted to go see the museum. And she did too, until she realized, wow, it takes like 5 hours to walk through the museum.
And still not see everything.
Exactly. But I was willing to wait that long, but I did feel bad because I felt like I was making you guys wait. So communicating about that is important.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I think we were kind of just explaining this, but deciding if you're like a wandering sort of traveler, you just want to wander aimlessly and get somewhat lost. If you're someone who travels by finding a destination, and if you're someone who hasn't traveled that much, you might not know which of these you are.
For sure.
Nathaniel and I, because we have traveled a lot, we tend to know which one we are. And some days it's different. Sometimes we really want to have a destination to take us to a certain part of the city and then wander. Mm-hmm. But we try to communicate that between each other kind of daily, you know?
Yeah. I think that's a good point.
And another point is that sometimes you won't realize that your way of traveling is different than someone else's. We brought up your mom earlier. I'm going to bring her up again. Sorry.
Classic.
So she will sometimes say, oh, do you guys want to go to the beach today?
This is a great example. This is one that you have no hard feelings on whatsoever.
Oh, I don't. I just had a different interpretation. So my version of going to the beach for the day is probably going somewhat like in the morning, not early, but
10 or 11.
Yeah, exactly. Like I want to get there in mid-morning, probably bring a little picnic lunch, be out in the sun with my pale behind self, probably get sunburned, hopefully use enough sunscreen.
Always miss a one spot.
Yeah, exactly. Always turn into a lobster on one of my shoulders. Have fun in the water. I mean, it's a beach day. You know, we're going to the beach. And your mom's version is going around 5 or 6, getting there and being there for sunset, where in Italy it's probably chilly, even in the summertime.
Yep, temperature tends to drop.
Yeah, and just kind of watching the sun go down. And it's chilly, and then we leave. I had no idea that was her expectation. She had no idea that my expectation was being there in the sunshine.
Yeah.
It's just 2 different versions of a thing, but it never would have occurred to me to check in about that until it happened.
And I mean, it's lovely, her.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's like kind of, they says, no, of course, it's the sunset of the beach. It's the best part. I'm like, I think the best part is the water. I think that's why I go to the beach. Mm-hmm. And the salt and the waves and other things. No, I also had learned that the hard way growing up.
So it's just a warning that things might come up that you might be like, wow, that is wild that we had different expectations.
Yeah. And none of it too, not that this is saying that you guys had an argument, that'd be silly, but especially whoever you're traveling with, it's not necessarily a cause for an argument or even like anything crazy.
And it's not that either of you did anything wrong.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just that you had different expectations.
And you had different meanings of what, again, going back to that, even when I mentioned food, you might have different expectations of what food means. When somebody's like, I got a power bar, that is food. And you're like, that is a power
That's
bar.
a sad food.
Yeah, we are the birthplace of the best food in Italy or Europe. Maybe not. I don't know. I think it's pretty good, but there's some banger food coming out of like France and Germany and Spain. Paella, my God. So maybe not the best. It's good food in Europe. So yes.
And another thing to communicate about, I think we did touch on this, is sort of your daily pattern, which might be different than your daily pattern at home. Like Nathaniel and I've said probably countless times, we tend to get up around 8:30 or 9 and go out for breakfast whenever we're traveling. It's important to ask people what, like especially for breakfast, what their expectation for breakfast is. Some people love a hotel breakfast.
Yes, they really do.
Some people don't want to have breakfast at all. Some people want to find an American cup of coffee, which is
Very
nigh on
difficult.
impossible.
Yeah.
Some people, like Nathaniel and I really want to try pastry shops in that city when we're there. So communicate about what your day is like, when you plan to get up, roughly, what you want for breakfast, if you want breakfast, if you eat, like we said earlier, 3 meals a day or 2 meals a day, and just kind of what your daily pattern will be, because especially if you don't live with someone, your patterns might be quite different, which is fine.
Yeah,
you just
for
need
sure.
to be able to plan for it.
But also, if on that note, I just want to throw out too that Italy has garbage breakfast. You are going to find that out if you've never been to Italy and you're coming to Italy. Garbage breakfast. It is a pastry and a cup of coffee. That is.
Some of the pastries in some cities are wonderful.
Oh, they are. They're phenomenal. But like
Some
when you
of them
see,
are not.
like, I mean, the English breakfast is sometimes a strange breakfast, but it's a full, interesting breakfast. American breakfast, classic. Other breakfasts of other countries, I'm sure, are interesting. I don't know others off the top of my head. But I mean, like, oh, there's like this interesting display of foods. And then Italy, it's like, do you want this really weird cornetto and also a cup of coffee? And you're like, that's awful. So you have to go find pastry shops and good things. And sometimes you and I will just have like I don't know, something savory for breakfast because like I cannot stomach another sweet thing. Not the frittelle. Those are amazing. But I meant like in Rome and stuff where it's like, you know,
Potentially also in the summertime if you're hot and you're
do
just like,
not
I
want-
can't have
yeah.
sugar right now, but I need something in my stomach.
because all of them too are like filled with like cream or Nutella or this like pistachio cream. And you're just like, oh my God, I just want something normal.
I think we've said this before, but I'm just going to give you a brief warning. I'm also going to write up an article about it very soon. Pastries that look like croissants in Italy
Are not.
are not. We have had a couple of croissants, which are not French, but they're closer to a croissant than a cornetto. But a cornetto is not a croissant. It looks like it.
Yeah.
Don't be fooled.
It's
It
a
tastes
disappointment.
very different.
Yeah.
So, yes.
Keep that in mind. as you
Absolutely.
travel. And also just the same thing on waking up. If it's with a friend, a partner, you probably know, a romantic partner, you probably know when they get up and when they go to sleep. But if it's a friend or a parent or something like that, if you're an early riser and they are not, that is something like I like my dad, love him to death, but he's not going to leave the house till noon. That's like an old car. It just takes some time to get warmed up. And I'm like, so I was up at 8:30. I'm going to go see stuff. Text me when you're awake. And we can go do, not awake, but like when you're out of the house. Like he's
Right.
like, you got the bathroom and I'm going to check the news. I'm going to do this. I'm going to blah, blah,
He's a
blah.
leisurely morning.
Leisurely morning.
That's his vibe.
And I'm like, sometimes he'll read part of a book. And I'm like, what are you reading up? Florence is outside.
But
Dad.
that's his way of traveling.
It is. And I love it. I
And
love
he
it for
loves
him. Well, I hope so. As long as somebody loves it. So I say that too, because if you were traveling with a friend or something and they're more of a late night owl person type thing, if they want to do nighttime events and you're like, I don't want to go to a club or a late bar or anything requiring me being out past 12, that's something to communicate obviously too, because they might be like, oh, you're not having fun with me. You're like, I am. It starts at 8 in the morning. It ends at 11:30. That's fun. Everything after 11:30 is not fun, or vice versa. If you're the late person and you're traveling with somebody who's up at 6 in the morning, you're like, what are you, Benjamin Franklin? Like, wake up at 10 like a normal person.
Did he wake up really early in the morning?
Wasn't it early to bed, early to rise makes a
Man,
something?
healthy, wealthy, and wise.
There
Is
we
that
go.
him?
I think so.
Okay.
I hope so. I just quoted it to him. He's rolling his grave if it's not him.
And speaking of sleeping, we've said this before, but it's important to take rests. It can change your whole trip to if you're out and about, have a little seat on a bench, have a rest in the shade, or in a warm cafe if it's wintertime. Just chill out. Go back to the hotel if you need to.
Yeah,
Put up your feet. That is a game changer. And it's important to probably talk about that with your travel partner and make sure they're on the same page.
for sure. Basically get on
Or
the same
not.
page.
If they're just powering through, they're powering through. You don't have to. And my last point is just, I know that you are all going to put in effort into your trip. You are currently putting in effort by listening to this podcast.
Absolutely.
And you're going to plan for it and do your best. But if you're traveling with someone, know that disagreements are likely to happen.
They are definitely going to happen.
You're going to be in a tense situation. You're outside of your comfort zone and it's going to happen. And it's important to realize for everybody that it's okay. You had a disagreement and you can work it out and keep going.
Yeah.
I don't want that I really hope something like that doesn't ruin your trip.
And actually, that's what I mentioned earlier, I wanted to touch back on as a last thing, was that even though, again, Italy can look really similar to wherever you're from on the surface, you are surrounded by a foreign language that you do not understand. And a lot of people do not know how they respond until, like, to somebody not speaking their language until they're in that environment. And it can be very stressful, both for the person and for you, everyone involved. Italians are very famous for being super patient when you're speaking another language. And they'll respond by speaking Italian louder and quicker on the off chance that you're deaf and you only understand words when they're thrown at you as fast as humanly possible. So, and some of them will, again, sometimes they have English, but not all, like sometimes they won't. And it's just, they'll speak really loud and really fast and then start looking at you and you're like, why am I wrong here? It's the whole thing. I've been there. I get it. It is stressful. And I say it too, because even when you and I first started traveling, there's a lot of, I think, you default to the person who's been there longer kind of thing. I think because you came to visit me in Italy. So you're like, what is he saying? And I'm like, I don't know. I've been here for like a month. I have no idea what's going on right now.
I got really flustered. I have social anxiety anyway, but being here for my first time, not knowing what anybody was saying did make me very uncomfortable and I would just freeze.
Yeah. Well, especially it's like whether they're addressing you directly or this and that, or if it's something where they're saying it in English and you don't understand, which is also really common because sometimes people say my English is perfect and you're like, your English is technically English, but your accent is, it's like, not in a bad way, but like stressing the wrong things or pronouncing the letters that they would in Italian rather than in English. And it can make English sound very confusing even to you and I. I'm like, we speak some Italian, like enough that we can, communicate. And then we speak English, but sometimes people speak us English. I'm like, what are you saying? Oh my God, that's English. Oh, I see. Oh, okay. So it's a bit of a, I don't know. It's a bit of a thing. It's just like sometimes
it can be stressful.
It can be so stressful. And I say it too, because it's like, everybody's going to be stressed, and not just because of language, the unfamiliar location, especially if you don't have phone service, so you feel cut off from people, especially if you are, and I say this too, you and I are very big. We've talked about this at length, I think, on other episodes, and even like some of our articles. I am not so subtle with it, but we urge you not to travel for Instagram reasons kind of thing. That can make it a trip so unbelievably stressful if you are, and I know some of you listening are probably like, nah, I have a really curated, beautiful Instagram. It's going to be an Instagram trip. I get it. But it can be stressful for both for you and your travel partner and the people around you who are not related to you and don't know you. If you are, if it's just like, I have to be at this rooftop bar to take a photo of my hand in the glass and the thing in the background, or I have to be at this thing, I have to have this picture of me doing this thing. And it becomes this thing where like that's what the trip is about and not necessarily enjoying the place you're in. And again, for people around you, especially if you are with someone like this and you are not forewarned this would how the trip would be, it can be stressful. And I think that you and I, we're not at all, our Instagram is like 80 followers and like no pictures. We just use it to communicate with people like y'all who message us. So, but I say that because like when we go to a different city with other people, it's not like businessy. We're not like taking notes and we're trying to get the vibe of the place. And yeah, we're putting down some things, but it's mostly like, is this a cool place? Should we tell people about this place? Or is this place not some place that anyone should ever visit ever? And it's usually 50-50. And so, no, I keep pushing this, but it is, I think when I first went traveling by myself, I know I was 18. It was probably the most stressful thing that ever happened to me, just in terms of, I was like, no, because I'd been solo traveling before. I think like one of my first trips when I was like 15 and but it was in America. So it wasn't that bad. I'd been flying like solo because, divorced parents. So you got to fly solo as a kid and go visit them. So I'm like, no, I was like, I can do this. This is easy. And then it was just really stepping into a place where there is no safety net. There is no way to communicate. There's nothing. And then doing it again, because a year later, because I was like, well, that was fun. And then doing it with you, it was just like, each time it was just as stressful as the first. I mean, slightly less, but still stressful. And no, if this is your first trip, especially if this is not your first trip, but it's somebody you're traveling with first trip, again, you probably know this, but they are going to be stressed out by things. And it happens. It is what it is. And as you mentioned, disagreements will happen for sure. It's better, if you can, to not let them be the end of the trip or the end of relationship or end of anything, just to be like, yeah, this is crazy how we both react in this environment surrounded by these different things.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that's just, yeah, again, this is not supposed to be a therapy session for y'all, but if you take it as one, you're welcome.
It's just so important to communicate and express your expectations and constantly check in with the people you're traveling with and just do your best.
Yeah.
I know you're going to do your best, but
sure.
it's a lot.
I think too, if there's like one thing, if you could take out of this 2 hours we've been talking at you, it's just constantly check in and make sure that they're expressing their needs and you're expressing your needs and expectations, but needs are kind of a potentially more important in terms of, I need to rest. I need to do this. I need to do that. And if you're traveling with kids, with a partner and kids, and you're like, I need your help, partner, with these kids. I can't do the kids and the luggage. You're on your phone, stuff like that. Like if you need that makes sense. Just communicate. Mm-hmm. So I think that's everything.
I think, yeah, it was a lot.
2 jam-packed episodes, tons of fun, and words that for a minute there escaped Darcy.
Yeah, that was wild. I took a little break and then words just left me.
Oh yeah, crazy. So I think that's everything. Thank you all so much for listening.
Thanks for listening. And as always, you can contact us if you have any questions or comments at our website, which is onlyabag.com, through our, email. There we go. Words at onlyabagpodcast@gmail.com. We are on Blue Sky at onlyabag and on Instagram still at onlyabagpodcast.
And if you have any ideas for a fun new name for our podcast, please send them our way and we will definitely debate them. And if we, in a month, whenever we end up with a new name, if it ends up being one of yours, we'll give you credit. I don't know what that credit looks like, but just somewhere we'll be right. Thank you so much too.
Yes, absolutely. We won't steal it. We're big on making sure that people
Jonathan
get credit where credit's due.
Exactly. Okay. So thank you all so much for listening.
Thanks so much for listening. Tanti abbracci.